Welcome back to the Spoonie and Caregiver live podcast with your host Jordan Banderas. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. But let's go ahead and get into today's episode, shall we? Now, let me ask you this real quick. This is very important, especially when you're a Spoonie or a caregiver or facing anything in your life. And the question that I have for you is, are old memories holding you back? Now, let me tell you why here. Let me tell you why I asked that, because this is something that I just realized recently and I wanted to share with you. Now, as by now everybody knows, everybody that listens to the podcast or follows me on social media knows that my wife my wife had to have two surgeries on her hip, on the right hip and the left hip. So right now I'm trying to take care of her. Now, before all of this started, I always felt like maybe I wasn't going to be able to do it because it was going to be back-to-back surgeries. They were only like 3 weeks apart. So I felt like maybe I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I talked to my wife about that. And one of the things that she said is like, well, as we were talking, she always said like, oh, you always bring up one thing, one memory, one old memory. And for me, it's the Disneyland memory. Now, if you never heard of it throughout the podcast, just let me give you the quick story. So when I was around like 6 years old in first grade, my uncle told me that if I did good in school, he will take me to Disneyland. Well, I did good in school, but for him it wasn't good enough, so he didn't take me to Disneyland. And ever since then, I guess I've been holding that inside of me. Like I've been holding that in, and it's been hard for me. So when my wife actually said that to me, that I keep bringing that up, I had to think, it's like, you know what? You are right. And I had to figure out why. Now, one of the things that I had to do, and just so you understand, this is not easy. It's not easy at all. It took me weeks to be able to figure out why that kept coming up in my mind. And like I say, it took me weeks. This happened before the first surgery, so it took weeks, and I kept thinking about it, like why is it holding me back? Like, why do I always go back to this particular memory? Especially if I need to take care of my wife. Like, I know I can do it, but in my mind there was always that thought saying like, no, you can't. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. And always the memory from Disneyland kept coming up. So what I had to do, I had to literally like look at the memory from a different perspective. So I had to literally break it apart, because I have forgiven my uncle, and I was like, okay, was it because of who did it? So what I had to do, I had to focus on like what my uncle said and what my uncle did at that point, and how it made me feel. Well, it didn't make me feel bad. I mean, good, obviously, but it wasn't towards him. Like anything that I was holding, it wasn't towards him. So because I like I said, I have learned how to forgive him. So okay, I was like, no, it's not my uncle. Boom. Let's move on to the next step. Let's look at the event, in this case going to Disneyland. Well, I went to Disneyland when I was older and I enjoyed it. I actually figured out that when I went to Disneyland, that's where I figured out that I didn't really like humidity. Me and humidity don't get along. Because when I went there, it was so humid, I was dying. So I was like, I still enjoyed it, I liked it, but it was okay. It wasn't the place. So if it's not the person or the place, I had to figure out what exactly is causing the problem. In this case, so it's not the person, not the place. So it must be the feeling of the event. And what I realized is that when I did this, when I went through it like this, when I pretty much broke it down to, like, pieces, broke down the memory to pieces and figure out what was causing the problem, I figured out that the feeling that he made me feel when he said like, oh, I'm gonna take you to this place, it built me up. It built me up because I was doing good in school back then. Back then. Yes, back then. I was doing good in school, and one of the things that happened is that he built me up. My uncle was the first person that I felt like will believe in me, like, like will care about me, because as I have mentioned before, the first memory that I have of my mom is her beating me up for putting her shoes on. I was even like surprised that this particular memory had more power or more weight on me that what my mom did, And by the way, I have forgiven my mom. So I kept thinking about it, and I was like, okay, so my uncle built me up because I was doing good, and he only said, if you do good in school. So he built me up, and then in the end, he let me drop. Like, he tore me down. He's all like, oh, you're not good enough. So I had to realize that this particular event from like 20, I was 6 years old, I'm 33, so like 27 years ago, literally was holding me back. Because as you have seen, if you're a long-time listener of the podcast, I always go back to that particular memory. And anytime that I try to do something, or that I try to start something, I'm like, what's the point of working hard when I know I'm not going to get it? And then I started thinking more about this, and it's like, it comes back to this particular memory. So this memory has been holding me back for so long. Even when I got married, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be good enough. When I went to therapy, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna be good enough, or I'm not, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it right. So this particular memory has been holding me back for so long that now, after I was able to process this and understand it and be like, wow, this at the time. And I just want you to understand this: when you're a kid and something like this happens, something that makes you feel a certain way, it's not dumb. It's not dumb. Maybe as adults we might see it as dumb, but it's not dumb, because when you're a kid, you didn't know how to feel about the situation or whatever happened. Even as adults, if you've never been to a certain type of feeling, you're gonna feel weird about it because you don't know how to describe it. You don't know what exactly is going on. So the same thing happens with a kid, especially with a kid that doesn't know what they're feeling. We just bury it inside. It's like, okay, it must be okay, because nobody explained it to me, nobody said anything, so I just held it inside. But once I processed it, once I was able to understand what this particular event cost me or how it made me feel, I was like, wow, I've been held back for something. So it's not dumb, like I said, it's like so minuscule in my mind. In my mind now, it's so minuscule, because I was like, well, if I had known better, I would have been able to do better or act better. But now I know better. So it doesn't matter how old I am, I'm gonna move on forward from this point on. And what that has done for me is that I feel like it has liberated me, to be honest. Like, it has been liberating. I feel like a weight, literally. I feel like the chains, like there are chains in my body that were broken, and they were dropped, and now I'm free. Like, I feel like I can be myself. I don't have any anger anymore. That's the thing, is like, I don't have any anger. I don't have any hard feelings towards anybody, or any bad feelings towards anybody, because I'm like, now I understand that I control my feelings, that it doesn't matter when it happened, you still can process them, and that once you do that, once you control your own feelings, and you understand how to feel about certain situations, you can move forward. Now, like I said, this has been liberating for me. If you're going through something like this as well, it might be liberating. You might feel good about it. I mean, like, I honestly feel excellent about this. And one of the things that I do want to tell you, especially if you're a spoonie and a caregiver, but let me give it to you in this point with a spoonie. When you're a spoonie, believe me, it happened to me. Like, when I decided to go to therapy, in the back of my mind, I was like, why should I go to therapy? Like, it's not gonna be worth it. Like, I'm gonna give it my all, and then it's gonna be bad. Like sometimes Spoonies, and I see it with my wife. You guys might be, or like, well, what's the point of getting better when I might get sick again? Or this type of feeling when you're doing good, you're feeling better, and then you have a setback. So it's kind of like the same feeling that I had with this memory. Like, I was doing good, and then I got torn down. Like, I got built up, and then I got torn down. So that's one of the reasons that you have to literally understand why that feeling keeps coming up, why certain memories keep coming up. And when you're a caregiver, the same thing might happen. Like, it was happening to me. Like, I felt like I wasn't good enough, like I was never gonna be good enough. I was never gonna be able to learn about my wife's conditions. Maybe I wasn't gonna be able to take care of her in the proper way. So this particular memory was holding me back so much. It held me back for like 27 years, or a little bit longer. But the same thing could happen to anybody. This is why I wanted to talk about it, because it could be happening to you right now and you don't even know it. Now, let me tell you this. If you have a memory that keeps popping up and up and up and up, and you keep thinking about it for some reason, it's not that you're not good enough. Depending on what the memory is, it's not that you're not good enough. It's that your mind, and this is the only way that I could put it in my case. Your mind is literally keep telling you, hey, process it, process it. This is what's holding you back. It's like a thorn in your leg, like, or like a wood splinter in your finger that you cannot find, but you have to dig deep, and then you're able to get it out. Like, I went through that, and it hurts. So this is how I feel about this particular memory. But now that I was able to process it, I feel a lot better. And one of the things that I do want to tell you, especially for all the Spoonies, or if you're and caregivers, this can be a stepping stone to rebuild yourself. Because the way that I see it from my perspective, and the way that I'm able to process this particular memory, looking back, is like, okay, this helped me back so much. This held me back all this long. Now that I know what kind of feeling it made me feel, or what kind of feeling it gave me, now I understand that if I feel that same way, it's not about me, it's about the other person not projecting something. Because literally, why would you build somebody up and then tore them down? That's not about you, that's about the person. Like, the person lies, the other person lies, the other person does it to hurt you or anything like that. But you can still process it and understand that it wasn't about you, it was about the other person. And this is very important for Spoonies, because, like I said, I have seen it with my wife, where it has hindered a little bit of her progress. Because obviously, unfortunately, when you're a Spoonie, there's going to be setbacks. We always have them. But once we understand that it doesn't matter what's going on, you just have to keep moving forward, you might actually get better. Like, I see it with my wife now. And same thing with caregivers. Look at me. Like, before, I wasn't able to really, like, express myself. If you look at the first videos from the podcast, like, I felt like I couldn't express myself. And now I'm more expressive, because I don't care about what anybody else thinks. I'm not afraid of not being accepted anymore. And that's one of the fears that this particular memory contributed to. Like, this particular memory contributed to a lot of fears, like not being accepted, not being loved, because I never thought I was going to be good enough. All because I didn't get a 10, I got an A, or an A plus, I got an A minus. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, is like, that wasn't about me. That was about my uncle. Like, maybe he thought I wasn't going to be good enough anyway, but when he saw that I did good, maybe he saw, oh crap, he's better than me. Because unfortunately, my family, when they went to school, they were not the best. They didn't have the best grades. But that's pretty much what could be holding you back. So if you feel like something is holding you back, and it's an old memory that keeps coming back, like it keeps popping up in your head, for whatever reason, don't look at it as a reminder that you're a bad person, that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, or anything like that, because that can lead to depression, and obviously then it leads to other things, more issues, and in the end it could be leading you to suicide, which we're going to talk about it in another episode. But if you look at it from a different perspective as to what is this particular memory trying to tell me, then you're gonna realize, and like I said, it could be something like holding you back, like in my case, that it made me feel like I wasn't gonna be good enough, or like I wasn't gonna be good enough. It could be something else. I mean, everybody has different memories that are holding us back, but just because it's a memory from the past, that doesn't mean that we can process it right now in our present, so we can move forward for a better future. You see what I'm saying? Now, and one of the things that I do, that I'm gonna say, in particular to this memory, is that this was giving me so many excuses to quit every time. Like every time I would quit something, I would go back to this memory. But now when I try to quit, like I was like, I don't want to do it. The other day, I remember I need to clean the house. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna do it. What's the point? Like it's just gonna get dirtier. But I was like, yeah, in my mind, something said like, you know what? You're not a quitter. You're good enough. You're gonna go out there and clean that house. And I did. So there's so many things that I quit because of this, in relationships, in watching something that was entertaining for me. I quit so many times because of this particular feeling that I felt back then when I was 6 years old, and now I'm 33, processing it as an adult, so I can live a better future and I can give a better future to my wife. So that's why I wanted to talk about with you guys today. Remember that something could be holding you back, and the problem is that something could be so small that we think is not important. But any memory that keeps popping up in your head, or that you keep thinking about, or anything that you keep thinking about, you have to understand this. It's there to teach you something. I learned that actually from Jay Shetty. He's actually pretty good. He was a monk, so he knows a lot about like meditation and everything. So I follow him and I learned that from him. So that's why I decided to do it. Now I wanted to talk about this with you guys, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are being held back by old memories, and we don't know how to process them. But this is why I always say, like, it's good to go to therapy. If you can process it on your own, do it. If you have to go to therapy, obviously do it. If you need to talk to somebody about it that can just listen to you, do it. You need to be able to open that up, open that memory, and examine it from the beginning, like how it made you feel, because it might not be about the person who did, it might not be about the event itself, it is more about the feeling of it, and that's what's holding you back. It's like literally pinning you down right now. That's how I felt, like it was pinning me down. So if something's pinning you down, you have to figure out why it's pinning you down. It's not just to get over it, is so you can move forward, especially, like I said, if you're a Spoonie and a caregiver, because once you do that, and you can ask my wife, once after I did that, I've been so much better. Like my attitude has changed. Like nothing, I feel like nothing is holding me back. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you guys are enjoying the episode. And thanks to you, we're growing. I like the new listeners. I like the new feedback. I like everything that you guys are doing. Thank you. But don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. That way we can grow even more. If you know anybody that can actually enjoy the episodes, don't forget to share them. Don't forget to tell them about the podcast. Don't forget to tell your friends about the podcast, and you can actually tell them about the community that we're building, so we can all share our stories and learn from each other. And by the way, if you still want to share your story or send me questions, don't forget to send me an email at the Spoonie and Caregiver live@gmail.com. You can send me an IM on social media, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, so we can keep growing. And it's all thanks to you. This is gonna be all organic. And thanks to you, we're growing. So I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your feedback. And thank you for everything that you do for making the podcast better. I really appreciate your feedback. And as always, I'll leave you like this. Always take care of yourself and have a good day.